family and fellow soldiers. I'm the Professor, and this is the moment of truth.
A Maryland family trying to get their loved one back. Her deportation is making international news because of this video we're going to show you. It shows her being dragged last week by people who appear to be officials in Ghana. The woman's attorney says she was deported from the U.S. after living in our area for more than 30 years. NBC News has reported about dozens of deportees being sent to Africa from the U.S. since the summer, part of a new third country deportation program. And as Tracy Wilkins and the News 4 I-Team report tonight, the video is raising questions from her family about how deportees are treated in other countries.
Mohammed Aghali's mom is his best friend. The two bought this home together in Bowie, Maryland, and he's now worried she won't return after being deported earlier this month.
I felt defeated, felt like I failed my mom.
You felt like you failed her?
I felt like I failed her just because I'm really, do anything for my mom.
He says his mom, Rabiatu Kouyaté, came to Maryland 30 years ago fleeing Sierra Leone's civil war. Mohammed was born here in the U.S. and says his grandparents joined them here and became citizens. Kouyaté never became a citizen, but was a nurse with a work permit and was required to check in with ICE every year. But things quickly changed during her July check-in.
They called her to the back, and they said, yeah, Rabiatu, you have an order of removal, so, we're detaining you. I mean, my heart just broke.
Did you think that she would see your mother again when they took her that day?
Yes, I was optimistic, I was hoping I'd be able to, see what we could do about getting her released that day.
But he would not see her face-to-face again. After several days, she was moved to an ICE facility in Louisiana, where she was held for months, according to her attorney.
Honestly, I don't think anyone expected her to be detained just because nothing had changed with her circumstances.
Immigration attorney Hannah Bridges represents Kouyaté and says while she was held in Louisiana this past September, a judge granted an order saying she could not be sent back to Sierra Leone, where she says her client had been tortured. Bridges says the U.S. immediately began exploring other countries to send her to, which she also tried to fight in court with requests for hearings.
Those requests went unacknowledged.
Are you concerned that her civil rights were violated during this process?
Absolutely.
How so?
She should have been given notice and an opportunity to seek protection from removal to a third country. And the government had multiple opportunities to do this.
Bridges says earlier this month, Kouyaté was flown from the U.S. to Ghana, a country she's never been to before.
Hi, Mom.
Mohammed called his mother in Africa while we were with him. She says her wrists and ankles are swollen from being shackled for the 10-hour flight. She said some others had it even worse.
There was another guy on the floor. That guy, they trained him from the head down to the feet. They said, if you don't cooperate with us, that's how we're going to tie you.
Kouyaté told the I-Team she and other deportees were sent to a hotel in Ghana. She says she was there for 6 days before this happened. A bus arrived to take her to Sierra Leone, even though an American judge ordered she could not be sent there. Her attorney says she was ultimately sent there anyway, although she resisted.
That's when they dragged me, so they bumped the back of my head.
The I-Team obtained multiple videos of the dragging that were sent to her family. Kouyaté believes the people in the green uniforms worked for Ghana's government. These are pictures of some of the injuries she says she sustained after the dragging. The video went viral overseas, and several media outlets in West Africa reported that the Sierra Leone High Commission, which is like its embassy in Ghana, said it's aware of the incident and will investigate. We asked the Ministry of the Interior for Ghana about this. They acknowledged our email, but didn't answer our questions. We received no response from Sierra Leone officials.
I consider America my home. It's like I built relationships there.
Kouyaté says she's safe for now in an undisclosed location in Sierra Leone, as her family sits in the home she owns in Bowie, wondering what her future holds and if she will ever come back again.
Do you feel like the U.S. government has failed your mom?
Yes, 100%.
We reached out to Maryland's ICE for comment several days ago. They asked that we share our videos of the dragging, which we did.
They still have not responded to our questions about the case. In September, the U.S. Department of Justice argued in a federal court that it had no power to control how another country treats deportees. It said that Ghana had pledged to the U.S. it wouldn't send the deportees back to their home countries. The United Nations Human Rights Office has called on Ghana to stop deporting people from the U.S. to their home countries if U.S. courts have said it's dangerous for them to return. And with Kouyaté, she was the primary caregiver for both of her parents, her mom and dad. They thought, the whole family thought, when she got on that plane that was headed to Ghana, that she was going to be released and coming home. So everyone involved in this was confused and shocked and just wondering what can be done at this point.
And at this point, is there hope? How are they feeling now?
They're feeling hopeless. And what her son said there about feeling like the country has let his mother down. During COVID, she's a nurse. She's worked in long-term care facilities and also in homes and worked throughout COVID and did so much for the people of this country. And she said she feels like this is her home. And now she's been taken away from her home. She left Sierra Leone and didn't want to, but had to, for her own safety.
This morning's briefing dovetails off of Monday's fall of Pras Michel in that it deals with another case of another immigrant who happens to find themselves in hot water. As detailed in the clip that you watched, Rabiatou Kayuta is a 58-year-old mother and grandmother who had moved to D.C. 30 years ago after she fled from Sierra Leone during their civil war, and in the process she had a child and she owns a home. Not only that, but her parents came to the United States and they became citizens. Kayuta, on the other hand, never did that. She was a nurse, however, for 30 years. She had a work permit, but never actually became a citizen. Now, let's get one thing straight right off the bat. The headline alone is completely and thoroughly misleading. This woman is from Sierra Leone. She's not from Maryland. That's the entire reason why she got deported. If she was from Maryland, she'd be allowed to stay because she was, but she wasn't from Maryland. She was an illegal alien who had been hiding out there for the last 3 decades, but she's not from Maryland. So to sit there and say this woman's from Maryland, that's like saying that she's a U.S. citizen or that she has some sort of legal status, and she doesn't. Well, apparently she thought to herself that she was going to fly under the radar, and that apparently after 3 decades of nothing being done, that nothing was ever going to be done. I guess to her, she was a de facto citizen and figured, well, she must be so valuable. After all, she's a nurse. And that's a valuable skill set, right? Even though the Trump administration has decided that that's no longer a profession. But to her, I guess she thought that was enough, but it turns out that it wasn't. The Trump administration has started a third country deportation program, with dozens of deportees already having been sent from the U.S. to Africa since this summer alone. This is basically the United States doing its own version of what the Brits had been doing when they were sending refugees from Britain over to Rwanda, of all places. And the whole reason for that is they got deals set up with these countries. Once they get there, don't worry, you don't have to keep them. You can go ahead and just dump them at the earliest convenience. The reason for these kind of programs is as a workaround for whatever legal or statutory restrictions there may be on sending people back to countries if they claim that they had fled them due to persecution or being threatened or what have you. Even though, as I've already documented for you, that happens to be a catch-all excuse that everybody uses. Everybody gets the talking points and they all get it spread around. Hey, if you want to make sure that the U.S. doesn't deport you, all you got to do is say that you're afraid for your life. Kind of like the cops do whenever they kill black people, right? Just go ahead and say you were scared. Say that there's somebody who wants to torture you. There's gang violence or whatever. And after that, they're not going to send you back. And as we've seen, that's exactly what's been happening. And in the case of Miss Kouyaté, what happened was she got to Ghana and got dragged. Literally. Now, first of all, there's no reason in the world why she should have been putting on a display like that. I mean, what's next? Is she going to be rolling on the ground, kicking and screaming like a 3-year-old? I guess she thought that if she put on a display that she would go viral and somehow that would get her sympathy and she would wind up like what's-his-name who got sent to El Salvador's maximum security prison, and maybe that would result in her being sent back. She doesn't seem to realize, like a lot of these people don't realize, if you're black, there isn't even going to be a pretense of due process. It's just going to be you're kicked out and that's all there is. There's not going to be any members of Congress or the Senate who are going to be showing up and saying, oh, we want to make sure that she's okay. Ain't no members of the Black Immigrant Caucus going to be showing up to bail her out. And since this is the way that the African countries are treating Africans who happen to get deported there, how do you think this looks to the rest of the world? It normalizes this kind of thing. Now, here's my question. Why don't these immigrants like Miss Kayute go ahead and call on their fellow Africans to stop deporting them once they get there? Stop dragging them around. Why don't they go ahead and do that? Why don't they tell the African nations how hardworking they are? Go ahead and make the case that you should be glad that we're here. Better yet, why don't they go ahead and tell the U.S. authorities how hardworking they are? You can't go ahead and deport us. We're so hardworking. We make such big contributions. Do you think it's going to matter any more than it did for those African migrants in Britain? See, the problem is that the political usefulness of these immigrants, has expired. They're no longer seen as useful to white power, and they've never been effective as a political counterlever against us, which was the real reason that white power let these people in the first place. All the immigrants, including from Africa, will be the first to tell you that they're uniquely hardworking and that it's their superior culture that they took from their home countries that makes them better. So then why is it that these hardworking people's reputation never translates to the very African countries they came from, or their neighboring African countries? For example, which country in Africa has ever said, those people from Sierra Leone are so hardworking, or those Kenyans are, or those Nigerians, etc.? Everyone over there says that they're hardworking and that they're so successful, and yet none of their neighbors ever feels the same way amongst themselves. And by the way, don't think that these deportations are going to stop even if the Democrats do get back into the White House in the next election. Keep in mind, it was under Biden's watch when you had those good old boys at the U.S. border who were whipping the Haitians with the bridles on their horses. That's what they were doing, like the slave catchers of old. That happened under a Democrat president. So what that shows is the continuity of policy is going to continue. Sooner or later, somebody was going to put all of these phony talking points to the test, and this is the result. Now, there's one more reason that this is the subject of this morning's briefing. One of the phony claims that we've been hearing from the tethers is that ICE was going to start rounding up foundational black Americans and deporting us. They had all of their little mouthpieces and a number of folks online who were spreading that particular talking point. This, of course, was a bunch of lies and propaganda that was meant to see if there were any timid, fearful, or cowardly folks among us who would be scared into taking up their cause for them. See, without us, they know that there's not going to be anyone speaking on their behalf, not even their own. Immigrants have never come to the rescue, not even for their own folks. That's the reason why I brought up Praz Michel earlier this week. If we don't stick up for these guys, no one will. And as they saw it, that was supposed to be our job. It was supposed to be our job that we're supposed to be everybody's whipping boy. We're supposed to be everybody's errand boy. Everybody insults us. Everybody denigrates us. Everybody spits on us to try to ingratiate themselves with the white power structure. And when white power shows its true colors and puts its foot up their behinds, we're supposed to also go ahead and be their crash dummies too. Well, the boomers were good for that, but the rest of us afterwards, no way. Do you see any BLM protests for these migrants being shanghaied back to Africa? Anyone taking to the streets and saying, no justice, no peace, you can't do this? Anyone taking up any petitions? Anyone making this into a campaign issue? Anyone saying, well, today you're going after these tethers, tomorrow it's going to be us? Even the Black Immigrant Caucus won't pretend to stick up for them. Even them. They're all a bunch of immigrants, but they're not taking to the parapets on this one. What, do you think that group of clowns hasn't seen this video? Of course they have. And even if they go ahead and give a couple of tisks or cluck their buck teeth on Twitter, it doesn't matter. They're not going to do anything. The video of this woman, it may go viral, but it's not going to result in any sort of policy change. Nothing's going to happen. It's not going to become a rallying cry for anybody. Instead, it's going to be an object lesson. If you think you've flown under the radar, you haven't. If found by ICE, you'll be deported. If a court tells you to show up for a hearing, it's probably a trap. So what's the right answer? There isn't one. As Neely Fuller said, white supremacy believes in taking both sides of the conversation. I'm still trying to figure out, by the way, how somebody spends 3 decades in the U.S. without ever becoming a citizen. How do you bring your parents over and make them citizens, but not you? Apparently, this woman was so hardworking that she forgot to do her own paperwork for 3 decades. Guess she was just too busy. But she's got plenty of time to work on it now. And these African countries are not going to protest this. Nobody's going to the UN. Hell, even when you had those African leaders like what's-his-name from South Africa speaking to Trump in the Oval Office, even they didn't say anything about these deportations. None of them were sitting there saying the US can't do this. You want to know why? Because they're all hideously corrupt and incompetent. They've all got their grimy little hands out looking for a handout from the U.S. government. They don't even care about their own citizens in Africa. What makes you think they care about the ones in the U.S.? Hell, the Sudan has resumed their civil war from 20 years ago, and the African Union isn't sending any troops, isn't sending any relief, isn't doing anything. The same way they didn't do anything 20 years ago during the last Sudanese civil war. And speaking of people who are not doing anything for this woman, what about this woman's son? Here he is. Apparently he's listening to his mother giving tearful conversations on the phone. He's watching videos of his mother getting dragged across the floor. And what's he doing about it? Did he even bother to go over there to help her? Has he lifted a finger on her behalf? Or is he just watching what's going on and crying like a woman? Which one is he doing? This is supposed to be her son, and yet he's not doing anything that a man is supposed to do when his mother's being mistreated. We've had a lot of people who love to get in our faces and boast and brag about the superiority of their culture and how they've got these stalwart values that they enshrine and that they instill into their children, particularly their male children. Well, I'm looking at this as a case study, and what am I seeing? Am I seeing somebody who's showing that if you disrespect his mother, there's going to be hell to pay? Are we even seeing so much as somebody who's coming to her aid in her hour of need? Sure, you can go ahead and use the cop-out that, well, he can't do anything on the U.S. side of the ocean because of the Trump administration. Fine. But why isn't he on the first thing smoking to Africa? Why is he still sitting in the U.S. going, oh, how sad it is. He's wiping his eyes. I can't believe I feel like I failed my mother. You're right. He did fail his mother. Or perhaps the superior culture failed her. And what about the parents? They're watching their daughter getting dragged, seeing the whole world witness this. Their child is sitting here screaming help and all the rest of it. And here they are, they're sitting around too. So you got this woman's children and her parents, all of them just sitting there as spectators. None of them going, we got to go over there and do something. None of them saying, hey, we're going to protest. And what about the Sierra Leonean government? Apparently the Sierra Leonean government that she's so scared of, they're the only ones who have actually said anything. They said, we're investigating. That doesn't sound like a government that apparently wants to get this woman back so they can torture her. If this woman's really so scared of them, how come they're not trying to get her back? All of this is just a bunch of cap. All of this is just a bunch of fraud and a bunch of lies. It's all the stuff that they've been allowed to get away with. But the reality is nobody is sticking up for these guys. They've just been allowed to get away with this mess for decades. And now that it's time for somebody to actually do something, they're looking around waiting to see if we're going to do something. And they're getting their answer. The answer is no, we're not. Everyone's going to have to carry their own. And we see how well they're carrying it now, don't we? This is the reality of the cultures that people like Miss Kayute come from. They don't come from a culture of unity or even cooperation. They come from cultures of tribalism, infighting, empty boasting about being superior to their neighbors. But that's a game that you can only play when you have a first world country to flee to. Without that, you get dragged, literally. This is what happens when people try to claim that others are jealous of them. How would that sound if Miss Kayute or her family or even other immigrants said that now? Is that what they're going to say? Are they going to say that the Trump administration is just jealous of these immigrants? Are they going to claim that the Ghanaians are jealous of them? That's why they're dragging this one. Oh, they're just jealous of her and her success. We hear that nonsense from them whenever they're being called out, so why not repeat it now? Because they only try that mess with other black people. That's why. They do it because they think that there's no consequences for lying. But that's the lesson that some of them hopefully will learn from this. There's always consequences for lying, especially when you lie to yourself. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Gavin Andrade, Mini FBA, Faith Speaks Life, Latavius, and Black Truth United. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.